You're listening to Talkline with Zev Brenner, America's premier Jewish broadcast on the air since 1981.
Now, here's your host.
Welcome back to the program. I'm Zev Brenner. To Los Angeles we go. Rabbi Abraham Cooper joins us. He is the Associate Dean of the Simon Wiesenthal Center, Director of their social media outreach. So good to have you back, Rabbi Cooper. How are you?
That's actually the global social action.
Global social. That's where the action is on social media, right?
You have to ask my grandchildren about.
So you do global. Well, isn't all the action today, or a lot of it, on social media? All the hate groups, that's there. And
absolutely correct, which is why we have our Digital Terrorism and Hate Project. And by the way, in mid-March, probably right around Purim, we'll be releasing our annual report that includes a report card on all of the social media giants. Now, as someone who never got straight A's myself in Yeshiva of Flatbush, so we're not only not giving straight A's, but a lot of the companies are going to be not happy with the grades they get, Twitter, others.
Well, some of them are pretty bad. They stifle free speech, and you can have in Iran, you can call for the destruction of Israel, and they won't ban you, but they'll ban you for saying other things in the United States.
Right.
I just don't understand the logic.
It's also, if you follow more globally, it's actually much worse. The Houthis, which are vicious anti-Semites, and have tortured one of the last remaining Jews in Yemen simply because he's a Jew and is still being incarcerated if he's still alive. They send the missiles and drones after the Israel's president when he went to the UAE. And they have multiple platforms on Twitter, in Urdu, in their different languages of the Middle East, that they use as recruitment tools and to spread hatred of the Jewish people, and that most of us are completely unaware of. So social media is the front line of a lot of our concerns. And the Wiesenthal Center, we've been at it almost now 30 years, and thankfully, the people who are doing the work understand the technologies a lot better than I do. But
So
it's a very important
issue. Let me you have access, you deal with these big groups. So how could they get away with not banning the speech that calls for the destruction of Israel by Khomeini and the other leadership in Iran? How could they get away with that in today's age?
I think it's a sort of a central question, and you can expand that to the whole issue of detouring into political censorship and actually trying to control the flow of information. I think the answer really is that we hear from senators and congressmen that things have to change, but so far, it's a multi-billion-dollar business, and a lot of effort is spent to deflect responsibility from the companies and make sure that the current rules in place in terms of even minimal regulation aren't changed. But something dramatic is going to have to change about social media, how they go about doing it, because all of the things they've told us for decades they couldn't do, about working together and about zero options, nuclear options on repeat offenders, everything they said they couldn't do, they did in the midst of a presidential campaign, and it continues till now. So we have to get them back on course to do their job of limiting and degrading the marketing capabilities of the Nazis and the Islamists and everybody else in between.
But have you ever considered doing a campaign against Twitter or Facebook, any of these companies that allow these vile expressions to take place and maybe on the carpet?
We meet with these companies regularly.
I'm not about meeting. I'm talking about actually making a campaign.
We also get a lot of the material removed. When you talk about a campaign, I'm all for campaigns, the ones that will work, not the ones that will make me feel good. And right now, when we talk about taking on the biggest of the big in the world, we need to assemble more allies, and we have to make sure that we focus the core concern here. Because if you land up making this an issue of, you want to censor speech, we lose every time. Now, they're the ones who are actually censoring speech, and too many of them are allowing the evildoers to market their hate 24/7. So we're in it. We're open to all ideas about how to move forward, but we have to make sure that we can get results. They're very complicated because other democracies have other rules about where to draw the line on speech. The United States, we've always felt until recently, whether you were a libertarian or a liberal, that free speech was pretty sacrosanct. That's out the window now with the social media giants. We have to get them to refocus on making sure that the bad actors and the terrorists and the food chain of extremism is dealt with, and less so about who we should be electing, voting for in the next elections in November.
No, I agree with you, and I want to get back to that, but I want to focus. I want to play a clip that everybody has been talking about the last couple of days, Whoopi Goldberg.
Holocaust isn't about race.
No.
It's not about
maybe
race.
ethnicity.
Well, they
No,
consider
it's
Jews
about
a different race.
But it's not about race. It's not about
What is
race.
it?
So she made these remarks. She apologized. Do you think she should have been banned by Disney from The View for making? Do you think she apologized?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not Rafa Machshir on this stuff, and but a lot of experience. So let me just say about what she said was really horrendous, but it's not her original idea.
Not coming from a bad place.
She is, coming from. I get you guys live in New York. I'm a refugee from
I'm
New
going to
York.
say ignorance. I'm going to say.
But no, I think it's actually a little bit deeper than that, and that is that the woke definitions, the new Dalet Amot, if you will, the new sort of when society talks about issues, there's a whole new sort of definition of terms out there. So, for example, racism, for some, including within the Jewish community, now relates exclusively to people of color. And that's not her idea. It's something that's now repeated over and over and over again. I think it's now taught in the schools. And here's the problem. When you grid that new definition over what happened in the Shoah, it doesn't compute, because Adolf Hitler, the Nazis, they were all about racism and race. They had the Aryan race and everybody else under
And the
them.
Jews being the inferior,
And
right?
we were the ultimate inferior, but just above us were the Slavs. Except, so the whole thing was based on racism. Their definition of racism and race, we know, the Jewish people know too well what that was all about. But if you have a new working definition of race that talks exclusively about people of color, this is what you come up with. So
Well, they say the Jews and the European Jews, for the most part, were white, and the Germans were white. So maybe she looked at it as white on white as opposed to.
yeah, but I guess they don't know the whole parsha of what happened to the Jews in Salonika, or how it was King Mohammed in Morocco, who basically told the Germans, "Go to hell, even though you're occupying our country. You're not taking our Jews." We now have the evidence that Hitler told the Grand Mufti of Palestine, when we take over Palestine, we'll wipe out all the Jews there. So this is all about race. That's exactly, you might even say they're the ones who brought race and racism to the table. And so when you have that kind of statement, yeah, you can say that the Jews, quote unquote, not a race, because we have, Baruch Hashem, we have white Jews, we have black Jews, we have the 3 day of the Jews of China who made Aliyah. We have, so in that sense, we're taught from Breshit, from the very first story of Adam. There's one person at the beginning, because we all come. There's one. It's the human race. So we're often put into, to the whites, we're not white enough, and to the blacks, we're too white. If you want to play that kind of politics, you land up eliminating and erasing Jewish history, Jewish life, Jewish values from important institutions.
No, but
So
here's my question, Rabbi Cooper.
please.
Is that, listen, she's coming from a woke place. She's extremely liberal and has these ideas. And the
Right,
state,
but she's also been very outspoken for years
but that's my,
on a lot of issues. You know, this is not a person who I don't think she has a bad bone in her body, and I
right.
also don't think
But
that she's a scholar.
that's the
But
rest of
she's
my question.
parroting now a
The
new
woke position.
a new definition
So let
that
me ask you this question. And I
factually
agree with you.
wrong.
Absolutely. She's woke and it's wrong. It's a new definition of racism. It's part of the whole new culture. So once she said it and she apologized, I thought her apology was good. So my question was, is there anything to be gained by having her banned for 2 weeks from the program, or people calling to that she should be banned forever from the program? In other words, once she made the mistake and she
Right.
apologized for it, is there anything
Right.
to be gained
Right.
by having?
I think that's that's up to ABC. If I was on the inside looking out, I would say she made an appropriate apology. But now I have a better question to ask. How about ABC's tshuva? How about the parent company, even though they said, look, we didn't know what was going to be said? Fine. Give us an hour on national television to explain to the American people the full scope of what racism really is. Have a debate. If you want to have the wokesters come and tell us, no, you're all white. Really? Well, we weren't white enough for the Nazis. It's absurd to play that kind of identity politics that's so corrosive and in a fundamental way dishonest. And people, kids who have to answer a multiple choice question in school, they're going to have to give the new answer if they want to get a 90 on their test. So in that sense, it's better that it came out now so that everybody understands, why she said it. Where did she get this from? She didn't make this up on her own. And I think it's also a teaching moment for Jewish activists and Jewish organizations, who believe sort of either they understand the current trends in society and are prepared to adopt those kinds of definitions. Adopting a definition that says that racism excludes Jews exactly mirrors what I experienced at the Durban conference in South Africa in 2001, when we had a woman get up at the conference and say, "I don't understand. You just talked about an attack on a synagogue, a fire in Paris, anti-Semitism. What does that have to do with racism? Anti-Semitism has no connection with racism. Therefore, we shouldn't be talking at all about anti-Semitism here in Durban." And they didn't. So it's not new. But what is new is that, think of it this way. You can have debates about which monument of which person in Central Park or in Prospect Park or in a park down in Arlington, Virginia should be pulled down, or at the New York Public Library. This is different. This isn't pulling down a monument. This is pulling down a historic fact of what racism has been for time immemorial. And by doing that, you land up erasing a whole slew of people. Guess who's at the front of that line to get erased? We are.
Right, the Jews. Our guest is Rabbi Abraham Cooper, Associate Dean and Director of Global Social Action Agenda for the Simon Wiesenthal Center based in Los Angeles. So, where do we go from here? As far anti-Semitism is growing, and there's a new wokeness that views Jews as, you can be anti-Semitic, maybe you're not racist, and there's a whole school of thought that's happening here. Why are we seeing all of a sudden greater amount of anti-Semitism? We're 2% of the population, but I believe, and you met with the FBI officials, I think a whole bunch of them this week, I believe we're 2% of the population, but maybe 40, 50% or more of the hate crimes in this country are directed against Jews.
Right. I mean, for anyone who's sitting in the tri-state area or in Los Angeles, as I am, or in West Rogers Park in Chicago, what happened last Shabbat, you can go on and on and on. We don't need statistics to tell us what we see. Violent anti-Semitism and attacks on our institutions are on the rise. And there are, many, many different pieces that are at play. One of them, I might say, is that in terms of securing our safety and our streets and on the way to and from Beit Knesset is, or for a Jewish day school or a JCC, we need full funding of the police across the United States. You can't ask in Los Angeles, which we have very close relations with the LAPD. They're doing it with smoke and mirrors. They had a huge chunk of their budget ripped off because of politics. And as a result, our community, among others, are less safe. Now, I still drive like a New Yorker. I know if I'm on a highway where there are no police, right, and it's 7:30 in the morning, and I have a new rental, I'm not going 65 miles an hour. I might go to 80. That's just the way we're kind of wired. God forbid, when you want to talk about the criminal element, people who are maybe incensed by what they or infected by what they absorb from social media, or maybe what they heard in the mosque, or maybe what happened, in the Middle East to their family. If they think that nothing, that A, they may not get caught, or B, if they do, as in France, that the judicial system is not going to take it seriously, or in New York or LA, where you now have bail before you can finish the paperwork, the perpetrators are out the door. And on top of it, everyone is locked away at home for COVID. So everything else is sort of magnified. That's one of the reasons. But, Zev, when I was in New York just before COVID, I met with the top NYPD, 3 of them, and asked them, what's the difference in New York in 2019, 2020, from 5 years ago? These numbers are staggering. And they all answered social media. So we definitely have to go after those companies. We have to make sure our elected officials, stand with us. But yesterday, or earlier this week, when I met with 7 top the folks from the FBI, including the guy who organized in less than 3 hours getting that FBI SWAT team down to Texas, I met with the people who do the work. And I said to them, and we're going to pursue it directly with with Christopher Wray and his office. American Jewry right now needs a special task force at the FBI on anti-Semitism. Why is that? You have local hate crime. We need to be able to connect the dots on what's going on and why. We can't say maybe, if, whatever. Only our government has the tools to be able to help figure out, if you will, holistically, what's going on, who are the forces behind it. The fact that religious Jews are being beaten on the street. Why is that happening? Is that just because, again, anti-Semites feel there's nobody looking over their shoulder? Or is there are other forces at play? I defy any Jewish organization, any human rights group, any civil society group to say, I know how to connect the dots. We don't believe in intersectionality. We believe in the facts.
Right.
In order for us to get the facts, and by the way, I think a lot of those facts are right there within the FBI. But like, God forbid, remember what happened with 9/11? The different agencies are overwhelmed with facts, but they weren't communicating with each other. Everybody was in their own silo.
Couldn't connect the dots.
They are the ones who need to help connect the dots. So, thank God for the police. We're so thankful. The state of New York, the feds, others, we get better cameras. We're hardening the targets. But we want to get past that era where we don't have to be looking over our shoulders to go pray, and don't have to continue to spend millions of dollars each year in security to secure our constitutional rights and our need to be able to rejuvenate, as all the other groups will, to rejuvenate our kehilot and our communities after COVID.
Now, this is not a new trend, but there's always been a trend where you have somebody's an event that's clearly anti-Semitic, but they're reluctant to do so. I recall the Brooklyn Bridge incident where Ari Halberstam was killed.
Yes,
That
Zichrono Livracha.
terrorism. Also in Texas, the FBI, and I wonder if you addressed it when you met with them, their reaction, well, this person, he's deranged. It's not really, he's really after the Jews. He's after something else. When you look clearly at the evidence, this person targeted the Jews. He was an anti-Semite, anti-Israel. But yet there's a reluctance to say this person is an anti-Semite.
Right.
Come up with all kinds of other excuses, including in Texas. Did you speak to
Right.
the FBI about that?
Well, Zev, you know me, well enough over the years, and I would lose my honorary citizenship in Flatbush if it wasn't raised. So let me give it to you in the context of how it was raised. The first thing I spoke about was how much American Jewry, our community, are grateful for law enforcement and for the FBI. We don't take it for granted. On November 9th, 1938, if you called 911 in Germany, the police and the fire trucks came in order to make sure that no German property was burnt as a result, and no real Germans, true Germans, were going to be hurt. So we come a long way, and we're very grateful. Number two, the agent in charge that day of what took place is an amazing person. He's one of the best people that the FBI ever produced, and he did a great job that day. When you review that press conference, and every Jew who watched it, remember for us it was just after Motzei Shabbos in the West Coast, every one of us reacted the same way. Everything else that was asked saying, well, we're still looking into it, we're investigating. When this came out, he immediately said there's no connection to the Jewish community. What I said yesterday to the officials, and it wasn't a question, I said, I know he's one of the best. And I also know, I don't believe for 1 minute he wrote that sentence. I think that was...
Who wrote the sentence?
That was a talking point that was handed to him. Now, I'm not a conspiracy buff. You know me well enough. I only but if you take a look at the original statements early Saturday evening from the White House, it didn't mention the word Jew. By the way, the president made a very strong statement afterwards, and all the other statements later on from the FBI were spot on. And the fact of the matter is, we also now have access to the phone call between the terrorist's brother in London and him in real time on Shabbos afternoon, which is released by the Jewish Chronicle, in which during these 11 minutes, he begs his brother to, put the gun down and let the people go. The F-bombs against America and his anti-Semitic stuff was all over the place. Now, everybody knows that who was listening to the call. Of course, the FBI was listening to get a gauge of the temperature of where this guy was at.
So why would they make such a statement in that case?
So I think a statement like that would be made initially because it did focus on Jews. That it wasn't, if there was a way, and unfortunately it was so clear that it was a Shabbat morning, and you had someone who came from London to target a synagogue nearby the federal facility where this woman, the lady Isis has been held. I guess the initial reaction was, let's not play that up. Since we don't have the final thing, we don't know for sure, just put out a generic thing that we're following.
My question, Rabbi
details
Cooper, is
carefully.
why? If they were in on the phone call and by the time the statement was released, they heard the phone call, they know what's going on. So why put that out? And that's troublesome. Would they do it in the case if it was an African American? Would they?
I think the answer to that question is not at FBI headquarters. I think it's in the White House.
Do we know who in the White House? Would you speculate? Okay.
No, I don't. I'm not a speculator. I will say that at the meeting, and it's, by the way, as you can imagine, not the first time I raised it with the FBI since the incident. No one has pushed back at me and said, "Come on, Rabbi, we know you only deal with, you're not a spec." I think it's very important for us to stay focused. The agent in charge that day, I think, did an unbelievable job. And thank God the rabbi and the other hostages got out. So more or less a nes mishamayim, was a miracle.
It's a miracle.
But we try to teach our non-Jewish friends and our children. We believe in miracles, but we also taught not to rely on them. And so going forward, we can't go into a PC or a woke sort of thing. If you do that, if you approach it, then it's not only the Jewish community that's going to get hurt. It's all Americans are not going to be served. And the people that I met with, at the FBI, their commitment to the safety of the American citizens, their whole lives are in there. These people put their lives on the line. These are serious players. So we raise the point. They know exactly how we feel. I don't see this as a talking point about pointing fingers. I said for the record that the Jewish community was hurt by that statement, and we're just going to go forward on that. We'll leave it to everyone else to figure it. They can do the speculation and all the rest. We're sending a signal, back to the people whom we entrust our safety to, and to our political leadership, that anti-Semitism cannot be deflected, and that's why I think it's so important what the president did say. And number two, we will not allow the Jewish people, American Jews, to be purged from academia or from public life. And we won't allow the likes like Amnesty International and CARE and other groups, other anti-Semites, to dictate to us what the definition of anti-Semitism is.
Well, you got your work cut out for you. Rabbi Abraham Cooper, Associate Dean and is Director of Global Social Action Agenda for the Simon Wiesenthal Center in Los Angeles. Thank you for joining. Keep up. Thank you for the work that you do. So,
Zev, God bless, and I hope to see you soon. Maybe we'll take another one of those cruises in the near
that was
future.
great. That was one of the best cruises. Rabbi Cooper and I and Rabbi Marvin Heyer, we were on a cruise on the Danube River. We went to one of the concentration camps, and it was just an interesting. Mauthausen was just a really fascinating.
Okay. God bless, and I hope you, your loved ones, and your viewers and listeners stay well during hopefully the tail end of this terrible pandemic.
Amen.
Thanks for listening.
For continuous Jewish programs, TalklineNetwork.com, or our 24-hour-a-day listen line at 641-741-0389. For past shows, you can find us on iTunes, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube, Instagram, and all major podcast platforms, or jewishpodcast.org. Thanks for listening to the TalklineNetwork.com.